Have you ever really thought about the instruction manual that makes you, well, you? Today we're going to dive into the world of genetics, that incredible invisible code that's written into every single one of your cells and decides so much about who you are.
I mean, think about it for a second. These are pretty fundamental things, right? They weren't just random choices. They were inherited, passed down from your parents in what's basically a fascinating biological lottery. So how exactly does that lottery work?
So here's our roadmap for the day. We'll start with the absolute basics, the genetic blueprint. Then we'll see what happens when alleles share the spotlight. After that, we'll decode the ABO blood mystery, get into the X and Y factor, and wrap things up by looking at something called X-linked inheritance. Let's do this.
Okay, first things first. To really get the story our DNA is telling us, we need to learn a few key words. Think of this as learning the basic vocabulary for our entire genetic conversation.
It all starts with something called an allele. The easiest way to think about it is like this. Imagine a gene is a category, like feather color. Well, the alleles are the different options in that category. White feathers or black feathers. You get one of these alleles for every gene from each of your parents.
Now your genotype, that's the specific combination of alleles you actually inherited. It's the behind-the-scenes genetic code, the actual instructions written into your DNA. We usually just represent it with letters to keep things simple. And if the genotype is the code, then the phenotype is the result. It's the physical trait you can actually see with your own eyes. The white feathers, the black feathers, your blood type, you name it. It's what happens when those genetic instructions are put into action.
So you might be thinking one allele is always the boss, dominant over the other. But genetics is way more creative than that. Let's see what happens when two alleles decide to share the spotlight instead of fighting for it.
This brings us to a really cool concept called codominance. This is when neither allele backs down or hides. Instead of one winning out, both of them show up fully and equally in the final result, the phenotype.
And these chickens, they show this idea perfectly. So a chicken with the WW genotype has white feathers. Simple enough. A BB genotype gives it black feathers. But what if it gets one of each? A B from one parent and a W from the other. You don't get gray feathers. You get speckled feathers, where both the black and the white show up at the same time. That, right there, is codominance.
Okay, so keep that idea of sharing the spotlight in your head. Let's take that principle and apply it to one of the most common genetic traits in all of us. It's time to solve the mystery of your own blood type.
So, unlike the chicken example with its two alleles, our ABO blood groups actually have three different alleles in the mix: IA, IB, and IO. And here's the twist. IA and IB are codominant with each other, but both of them are dominant over little io, which is recessive.
This chart shows you exactly how that plays out. If you get an IA from both parents or an IA and a recessive IO, your blood type is A. The same logic works for type B. But what if you get an IA from one parent and an IB from the other? Well, they're codominant, so they both show up, giving you type AB. And to get type O, you have to inherit that recessive IO allele from both parents.
All right, we've covered chickens and blood types. Let's shift gears to another really fundamental piece of your genetic puzzle, the chromosomes that determine biological sex.
Inside basically every cell in your body, you've got 23 pairs of chromosomes. Now, the first 22 pairs, those are called autosomes. They handle most of your body's traits. But it's that final 23rd pair that's the real game changer here. It's the one that determines biological sex.
And you know what? The system is beautifully simple. Biological females have two of the same kind of sex chromosome, the X chromosome, so their genotype is XX. Biological males, on the other hand, have two different ones, one X and one Y, which makes their genotype XY. Now, check out how this all plays out. A female is XX, so all of her eggs will carry a single X chromosome. That's her only option. But a male is XY, so about half of his sperm will carry an X and the other half will carry a Y. This means that it's actually the sperm that determines the biological sex of the baby. So, what does that mean in the real world? It means that every single time, there's a 50% chance of the offspring being male and a 50% chance of being female. It's a perfect 1-to-1 ratio. Basically, a coin flip that happens at the exact moment of conception.
But those X and Y chromosomes do way more than just determine sex. They also carry genes for other traits, and this leads to a really fascinating pattern of inheritance that we're going to explore right now.
Okay, this is the absolute key to understanding sex-linked traits, so listen closely. The Y chromosome is a lot smaller than the X chromosome.
And this isn't just a random size difference. It means the Y chromosome is literally missing a lot of the genes that are present on the X. And that has huge implications. For a male who is XY, if he inherits a recessive allele for a disorder on his single X chromosome, he's going to have that disorder. Why? Because there's no matching gene on a smaller Y chromosome to mask it or override it. A female, being XX, has a backup. She has a second X chromosome that could carry a dominant, healthy allele to cover up the recessive one. The classic example of this is red-green color blindness. The allele that causes it is recessive, and, this is the important part, it's located on the X chromosome. This is exactly why the condition is so much more common in men than it is in women. So let's run through a quick scenario. We have a carrier female, she has the allele but isn't colorblind herself, and an unaffected male. Now you can see all the possible outcomes here, but look at that bottom right square. There is a 1 in 4 chance, or 25%, of having a male child who inherits that one recessive allele on his only X chromosome, which means he'll be colorblind.
So when you pull it all together, you start to see this universal principle at work. From speckled chickens to our own blood type, all the way to sex-linked traits, our inheritance isn't some fixed destiny. It's a beautiful and complex game of probability, all written in the language of alleles.
You know, we've really just scratched the surface of our own genetic blueprint today, and it makes you wonder, doesn't it? As we keep learning how to read this amazing language of our genes, what other profound secrets about who we are just sitting there, waiting to be discovered?